Okay, I hope now it's as before, all its work. Okay, some things have been said already by Chiara and me before in the presentation, the general presentation. So I want only to underline that in this presentation, we aim to describe the structure, the purposes, and the targets of our project. And we want in particular to underline the connections that we are creating or aim to create. And I underline this aim to create because I think that this is a great opportunity to exchange ideas and opinions on these common topics, and also the opportunities of open further national and international collaborations. What's SERICA? SERICA is an acronym that stands for Sino-European Religious Intersection in Central Asia, Interactive Texts and Intelligent Networks. So SERICA, yes, concerning SERES, but it has a more wider subject, and it does not deal only with China. This project, as we have already said, this project includes the research groups, and we have enrolled a large number of researchers until 2025 in the most important moments of the project. What's new in this project? We have seen, and the conference of today is an example, that in recent years have witnessed the flourishing of studies and books about the Silk Road or roads, which are to be counted among the liveliest and most attractive subjects in entangled history. However, this specific research field has not received in Italy the attention it deserves, unless for individual publications. Our work aims at presenting and discussing new documents, often unpublished or less known, highlighting cultural and religious contacts and transfers of ideas between East and West, which are as important as trade exchanges. 2 words about our logo. The new SERICA logo that we will insert on the new website puts together 3 cultural elements: a classical temple that symbolizes Western culture, an Indian palace referring to India and Central Asia, and the ideogram zoo involving the idea of walking and the mutual connection and transfer of ideas between West and East. This is a way to underline, to highlight the idea of connection. This is the network. The network involves also many other unities of colleagues and friends and projects as Venice, Siena, Ravenna, Napoli Orientale, and the Seoul National University, the Beijing Foreign Studies University, the American project Tessere, with which we have in course a collaboration about the markup of some texts. Which disciplines are involved? Not only Greek and Chinese, but also Latin, history, Sanskrit, Central Asian languages, and mainly ICT. In particular, we have thought that the role of ICT should be enhanced, and some colleagues of the Department of Information Engineering in University of Pisa are preparing some tools for semantic web and artificial intelligence, and some new tools to research through the text and through the digital library. A company, the Net7, is preparing the website and writing the informative parts or for the integration of the research activities. The ICT methods will be also involved, will concern also the definition of general categories of users, because we want to give a wide access to the materials we will host on the website. So we want to work into the logic of the open resources. This project has been awarded by our government, and its results must be open to the community of researchers. So when the website will be open to all, you will find also the possibility to enter in the text, to annotate at some levels the text with your personal interests and aims. This is an image of the Italian page of the website where we are working about it. There will be an Italian page, an English page, and perhaps in the future a Chinese page, but we are not still sure about it. And we will offer many possibilities of access, but in this moment, the website is still in work. I can say also only that it will have a part of digital library, a part of image library, timelines, interactive maps, and so on. The creation of the digital library is for us pivotal, because this digital library should make available to the researchers all, or if not all, a large number of texts that are now, for instance, or difficultly available on the web because only in PDF, but in PDF that are not searchable, or in other format that are difficult to insert in our machines that can research through the text, that can dig out in the text and prepare, for instance, list of words, n-grams, density, histograms, and so on. So the first idea is to transform the digitized text into searchable text through some passages, for instance, correction of mistakes, transformation of PDF in TXT, and markup with XML in the first phase. And we are working also on the ground of the experience of another Italian project concerning these topics, ELA, Eurasian Latin Archive. This is the URL, ela.unici.it. And this is a project that now is we're waiting for further financing, and we are taking his text and adding more other texts and giving a better quality also to this text. Then we are trying to create geolocalized and diachronic maps of the place identified in the text. And this is very important because the location of every place and every person involved or quoted in the text can create a great map, intellectual map, and not only geographical map of activities in of the authors or of the people quoted by the authors. We aim also to deal with linguistic and literary studies on these works, with particular attention to Latin texts. We also aim to disseminate through virtual and real exhibitions, in presence exhibitions, I mean, with in particular with the MAAO, the Museum of Oriental Asia of Turin, but not only, the results of the research, because dissemination is one of the purposes of this project. We have sometimes a low knowledge in Italian schools and citizens of these subjects. And then we want, as I have said, work with the elements of semantic web. We have already made some meetings, and I get the opportunity to invite you, if you want, to two next international conferences that we will organize on 13th June, 1st July 2022 in Turin, with the title Dangerous Book, Dangerous Latin Literature from Antiquity to Modern Age, talking also about some examples of books concerned by the project. And in Siena, Pisa, from 5th to 9th September, so always 2022, to the double conference Global Latin 2 and Roma Sinica 3rd, that will deal with the global approach to Latin and to the scientific language in Latin, and mainly of Latin texts that concern scientific subjects in Chinese and in Chinese experience. I mean, the Latin texts that describe, for instance, the Flora Sinensis, Michał Boym, or the architecture, and that can allow a comparison between the Western and Eastern thought and language, in particular on the science. And then we can now pass to some examples of what we are doing, because this is the theory, the general theory, the infrastructure, as Otto said before. But for instance, we are creating an epigraphic repertoire, an annotated dossier of Greek and Latin inscriptions pertinent to imperial era trade relations between Rome and Arabia, and the mobility of people in Near Eastern areas, and of non-Buddhist inscription from Gandhara region. This is one of the parts that are dealt by PISA unit and so research group. And so I have not a clear knowledge of what they are, of the level at what they have coming. But I think that in the website we will host images, we will host descriptions, we will host the possibility to work also with the transcription of these inscriptions. For instance, I mean that from this dedication of Palmyrene merchants to benefactor is a known epigraph inscription of IGLS. We will do something also with Greek text. We will analyze and compare this Greek text with the other Greek text and so on. The task and the purposes are the analysis and transcription of these various sources from the early centuries of the Roman Empire to the late Middle Ages about the relation between the Roman and Byzantine empires and the Chinese Empire. And the PISA research group works also on Christianity in Tang, China, on Armenian historiography and ethnography, an examination of Manichaean and Christian missions in the light of sources in Middle Iranian languages, in Latin texts about shamanism in Central Asia, and in Islamic Christian controversies in the Byzantine period. We are also preparing not only a digital library, but a series of translated and commented texts. We have envisaged two series, a series in the Greuter publisher, directed by me and by the Korean colleague Jaewon An, whose name is Roma Sinica. And this series will host publications of books concerning, in English, concerning elements of these relationships between Western and Eastern thought. And another series for an Italian publisher whose name is Pacini in Pisa, with the Italian translations and commentary of some of these books. For instance, we are thinking to Boehm, Couplet, Intercetta, and so on. If we pass to other case studies more concerning the part I deal with, so linguistic part concerning Latin, and coming back to the digital library, I have to underline the first question. I want to show a little example. In the low part of my slide, you can see what we have, for instance, of one of the most important texts, the Confucius-Sinaeum Philosophus, what we have on the web, because I'm well aware that some excellent works of Maynard, Thierry Maynard, have published a translation of parts of the Confucius in English. But on the web, if, for instance, we compare what is on the left in the archive.org and in archive.org in the text version, not in PDF version, and on the right, what we have with our transcription prepared and by Simone Mollea and Elisa Della Calce, who are preparing also an Italian translation and commentary of this text, we see the enormous difference, because it's easy to read this text in PDF, but it is less easy and more difficult to have a good plain text to do researches, semantic and syntactic researches. We have already worked a lot on this book. I have a lot of, perhaps it's too much, but already worked on this book. These are some recent publication, and one is forthcoming, and they concern the presence of Cicero and other authors in the Confucius-Sinaeum Philosophus. The first results of our researches, we have other papers already submitted to journals, show that the Jesuit Latin is strongly indebted with the phraseology and framework concepts that do not belong only to medieval or theological tradition, but are also based on a solid classical background. The classical heritage has been already identified in Ricci de Amicizia through the mediation of the booklet of the Resende. But in this book of 1687 becomes a red thread that allows its interpretation also as an exception example. And this is important because the goal of one of the most important goals of classical studies now, it's the reception or tradition or Fortleben studies. And this is a very, very virgin, as I could say, very new subject of interest. And in particular, we have seen that the Jesuit prose that has a strong Ciceronian feature, deeply influenced by the Ratio Studiorum of the 1599, represents an example of usage of classical rhetoric in a context, where, as for instance, Marc Fumaroli and Robert Merricks has shown, the Jesuits created a new system of studies to fight against Protestantism. So the connection with the religious studies is also important. And I want only to show briefly, very briefly, two little examples. In the Liber Secundus, not published, but are very easy. In the Liber Secundus, there is in the first page the description of this book in Latin, and they say that the book deals with de medio sempiterno, sive de aurea mediocritate illa quaest utait Cicero internimium et parum. So it means the middle, the idea of middle, the eternal middle, and mediocrity, golden mediocrity that, as Cicero says, lies between the excessive and the limited things. And here is clear that the textual background of the description is Ciceronian, but not only. We have a clear quotation of, for instance, the Officis 189, where we find mediocritatem illam, quest internimium et parum. But we find also a cultural memory of the oration more best known, the aurea mediocritatem of Sermones. Another example, a little later in the Liber Secundus of Scientia Sinica, is another quotation, another double quotation, I have to say, because it's not always so, but sometimes, and I could say often, the translators present in these parts double quotations or double references to classical authors. For instance, here we talk about what happens to the souls after the death, and here we have a reference to Cato, apud Ciceronem, who calls the philosophy, little philosophy, less important, minutos. And this is a quotation of Cato Major, 85, ut quidem minuti philosophi censent. But immediately after, there is another quotation of Laelius, the dialogue on the Amicitia, a long quotation that is almost correspondent to our editions, but it is interesting because the association of Laelius, the Amicitia, and Cato Major de Senectute is a clear school association. So this presence of Cicero, but not only Cicero, I could add other authors, in particular historians, and a little bit more strangely, but not so much Seneca, but it is another problem. This presence reveals a clear school origin. Obviously, we could also to underline the presence of other passages. For instance, the expression minutos philosophos or minutos refer to philosophy, minutos refer to philosophy, is also in De Divinatione, first book, or in Lucullus 74. And this could be, now I have not the time to demonstrate this, but it could be also possible, I think, to demonstrate that sometimes the reference in the book is not so easy to not so easy to find, but reveals also a deeper level of allusion. But in this is the matter of next inquiries. And so let us go back to our project. SERICA aims to bring together, unify research in the philological, linguistic, and historical fields, which despite having reached very high levels of refinement, still remain distinct and separate, and too often do not create dialogue between them. And as we have seen in the former presentations, personal presentations, the interaction among disciplines is always more important for classics, and the comparative perspective is receiving always more attention. And it is important that so happens. We want to create a network. The network is progressively expanding, and we would like to last collaborations for the next 20 years, because the history of our times, I mean the times we are living in, is always more important to build the bridges and not walls, walls, I could say, as unfortunately recent historical events show us. Then we aim to disseminate the scholarship results to allow cultivated people to understand how the study of new dimension of past can be useful for today. And we want to work very strictly in collaboration with digital humanities. So we hope to receive suggestions, help from everyone, and we thank a lot for your attention.